Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. So happy to have each and every one of you back here today, and also super excited to have my guest with us today. We've got Keith Sproule. Keith is the executive director of Abercrombie and Philanthropy. Keith, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thanks very much. Happy to join.
Yeah, we've spoken a couple times, and we're finally here in a spot where we can record the conversation and share it with our audiences. I mentioned to you, Keith, before I hit the record button. I want to mention to the listeners that today we're doing something different. I'm actually recording this in a coffee shop, so there may be some coffee shop noises in the background, and that's actually intentional. So for anybody listening, if you have any feedback on that, feel free to share it with me. But so Keith and I we're just basically going to have coffee today. So Keith, thanks for participating in that.
We're gonna New York style coffee. We'll have a coffee talk.
Yeah, coffee talk. Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember that was a Saturday Night Live scale, wasn't it? Like they had coffee talk.
Yeah. Wow, we're dating ourselves.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So Keith, super excited to have you here. You're actually, where are you right now? You are on the East Coast, aren't you?
So I work out of our Chicago office and London, between the two.
So you're in Chicago right now. Okay, but you live in Jackson, right?
I do. I live out in Jackson Hole.
Yeah, I'm sure quite a few of our listeners have spent some time in Jackson Hole, and I'm sure some of them probably even live there. I know I've got a lot. You and I have quite a few mutual connections in the area. Anyway, Keith, before we get going, because we're going to dig into your background. I really want to learn about you, figure out how you got from where you were to where you are now. Before we do that, let's give our listeners kind of an idea. I suspect most of them have heard of Abercrombie and Kent, but let's tell them a little bit about Abercrombie and Kent Philanthropy and what exactly is it that you do?
You bet. So Abercrombie and Kent has a long history of ensuring that we give back to the communities where we send our guests. In the past decade, we've really doubled down to expand that portfolio of work. And so at the moment, it's 77 projects in 31 countries. And we take it really seriously. Education, healthcare, job creation, conservation investments. We think of it in the context of investments, in part because it's not just airdropping stuff on people. We're really working to ensure that we're uplifting, improving lives and livelihoods. So we tend to do things at scale. We build the primary school. We build the maternity ward. We establish that women's enterprise. Right now, our 2025 investment activity is coming in at about 3.3 million. So we've been doing a lot of really good work. And I got to say that continued demand in the context of our guests and the guest satisfaction with this being a part of their travel experience, we're already gearing up for 2026 to be another record year.
Wow, very cool. Quite a few questions, but I want to ask a couple of them now, and then I know we're going to come back to some of them a little bit later. But I guess the first question is, how does Abercrombie and Kent look at it as far as, we don't need to go into the details. It's not all about the organization, but I'm just curious. Does the company look at it and say, we're going to put a certain percentage of our profits or a certain percentage of our income into the philanthropy? So is it, if the company does well, then you have more money to go do great things, or is it something totally different?
Yeah, AKP gets a little slice of every sale from every product line that we have across the company. The goal is to integrate into the guest experience an understanding a framework of understanding what are the educational delivery challenges that this community faces, the medical delivery challenges, the job creation challenges. And so fundamentally, their commitment is to cover all of AKP's operational expenses. And to the extent that we incorporate this and the guest feels inspired to also support, 100% of the guest donation goes to the project of choice. That's kind of the gold star in the nonprofit, the NGO world. And very proud to be able to communicate that. And then we ensure that the guests actually receive transparent communication about what we've done with their support.
Very, very cool. I'm just curious, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so let's imagine, does the money on the philanthropy side of it tend to flow in the same direction as the guests? So where I'm going with this is, let's just say, hypothetically, 50% of A&K guests go to Africa. Does that kind of mean that maybe around 50% of the philanthropy money goes to Africa as
No,
well?
that's totally a reasonable question. Look, in the world of travel, most of our companies have a big presence in Italy because everybody wants to go to Italy. I'm going to tell you that in the context of our mission, we're not going to raise the bar of education or healthcare in Italy. And so, even though guests are going to developed destinations in many parts of the world, we're not investing in all of those locations. So the same is true in Hong Kong, Australia. So we tend to shift resources to areas where we can truly have an impact. And just by way of an example, Jason, we have identified lunch, school lunch, as one of the critical factors for success, for educational success. And communities that live on the edge of wilderness, windy, impenetrable forest, where everyone wants to go, see the mountain gorilla and go gorilla trekking. We feed every day 4,700 kids. We deliver that lunch for 21 cents a plate. Now, I could never do that anywhere in Europe, anywhere in Australia, US. We do it because we work in partnership with the parents of the school. So we build the kitchen, we deliver the maize meal and the rice, but the parents deliver the beans, the greens, and the firewood. And in this process, we transform the whole learning environment. Because of school lunch, the kids are getting there on time and they're staying through the day. And of course, it affects development and of course, we feed everyone, so the teachers and the security guard and all are in the mix. But
Mhm.
it's if I can do that in more locations, I'm so eager to have that level of transformative investment at 21 cents a plate. That's why we do so much of it.
I'm actually really happy I asked that question, because I didn't have a preconceived idea that we were going to discuss that. But you're right. A lot of guests, I don't know what the mix of Abercrombie and Kent guests are, but I know a lot of people go to places like Italy or Australia, maybe Japan, all these places. And you're right. Where can you guys get the most bang for your buck is not necessarily in those places. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I guess, well, I'm not sure. I can't remember what the other question was, but it's gonna come back to me as we have the conversation. So let's do this, because I find when I meet with people like yourself, there's always an interesting story. It's like, how the heck did you get into this? It probably wasn't by accident. Maybe it was by accident. I don't know, but let's figure it out together. So how far back do we need to go, Keith, to kind of get a feel for what got you into this this world that you're living in?
Oh, like most good things in life, it was serendipity. I had an inkling and a desire to travel. At 18, I took my year walkabout and gap year and hitchhiked around Europe and North Africa. Ended up at university, and it's been a whirlwind of various locations for living and jobs and travel ever since. So
All right,
I feel very privileged to say I've traveled to over 140 countries, and I've had longer term living experience in 12. And so it's sort of, life evolved to where I am today.
let's dig into the part right before the walkabout, because I suspect something was going on. Where did you grow up?
East Coast, just outside of New York.
All right, all
I can
right.
talk
So
like a New Yorker. That's why
yes,
we're having coffee.
yes, you can. All right. So you said you kind of the inkling of travel around 18, but I suspect there was stuff going on earlier than that. Did your parents travel? Were there people around you that influenced you? What do you think it was that got you to want to go take a walkabout? Or was it just, I just need to get out of this town I'm in? Because that's a
Yeah,
valid thing that comes up too sometimes.
it was definitely influence of my father. He was a history buff and had studied history, and we had lots of global conversations. I one of my cherished memories. Dad has passed, but I was hitchhiking around, and back in the day, so I'm going to date myself, but there were payphones, and on Sunday mornings I would call home and we would talk, and I rang him from Sevilla in Spain, and I told him that I had visited the Alhambra, and he wanted to know, now isn't that one of the sites the Moors had developed? And I will never forget this feeling at 18, holding the phone out, like, how did you know that? This is my adventure. But in fact, it was reflective of our relationship. We could talk about the world and locations, and so I'm very very sure that he was the inspiration.
That is so cool. What kind of stuff were you? I mean, it's what were you interested in before you started traveling in school? Were you already interested in this history and global stuff with them? Or did that come more about once you started actually traveling?
I think at 18, I was not sure what I wanted to study, and for some folks, it's the right decision not to jump into university, and for me, for sure, it was. So I just had a car and wandered around the U.S. and a lot of the national parks for the first half of that year, and then sold my car over the holidays and got to Europe. And back in the day when you could hitchhike, I hitchhiked around, got up north in Northern Europe in January, February, and it was too expensive. Went south and it was warmer, and then just had no idea that I was going to go across and wave to Gibraltar and land in Morocco and get through Morocco and took a boat around to Tunisia, and started doing this in 18 and 19. It was certainly an anchor event in life that sort of opened a lot of horizons, but I didn't go into it expecting that was going to be the case.
Do you, one thing that I know comes up, and I've been traveling full time for 4.5 years. And one thing I've noticed since I've been traveling so much is the people I tend to meet other people that are kind of like minded, kind of have that wanderlust or that just insatiable desire to just consume culture and social settings and all that. But maybe some of the people that I knew before that were didn't quite get it. So I'm curious about like the other kids you went to school with, or maybe even people in your family, when you started your big journey at 18, I can't ask you what they thought, but how did they seem to respond to all this?
I think even my family didn't know what to think. I mean, I'll say that 30 years later, my mother would still ask, and what do you do again?
52, my mom still asks me that. I get that.
I had a really beautiful memory from those days. I met a Japanese gentleman, Kazuya Nagai, and we ran into each other in Spain doing the usual backpack circuit and whatever hostels, and sort of re-met in Portugal and decided to travel together. And we went down to Morocco together, and just with a group of random backpackers, like you do when you're kind of just floating. And I was definitely at 18 just floating. I was this naive, you know, bright-eyed American kid. Kazu had done a lot more traveling. There was one moment landing in Morocco. Ceuta is a Spanish port. We went through the Spanish port. We're loading onto a local bus, driving south, and it's packed, as you can imagine. We're in the 80s now, and it freaked me out. But I didn't know that. I turned inside, and Kazoo was so great, slightly broken English. At about day 3, he yelled at me. He said, you change. You become like rock. You became a rock,
Mhm,
like I
mhm.
had closed up. And I'll never tap me in the chest. And he says, I don't know you. And I realized, wow, that's true. That had happened. And it sort of like punctured this defensive fortress I had sort of put around me. And I feel like he opened me up to the need to be open in the context of travel in so many ways. I know that's not the question you asked, but
Well,
that's the
no,
memory
no,
that came back.
it's actually really, really cool because as I listen to you, I'm like, oh yeah, I've kind of had that type of thing happened in some of my travels as well, but I didn't have somebody there to call me out on my stuff. Do you remember? Do you remember kind of what it was? I'd love to dig a little deeper as to just that because traveling like that, a lot of people have never had that experience. And at some point, maybe in the beginning, it feels like one thing, but then every once in a while, just out of the blue, something will just shift, and you're kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you remember what was going on that caused you to kind of go inward?
For sure, I had no preparation. I mean, I was as raw as could be, and sort of just figuring things out and looking at the post-its on, some of these hostile walls, and making last-minute decisions just like you do. And so, I think the smell, the sight, the sound, all those sensory intakes were overwhelming. Especially in those days, you sort of cross over and it's dusty North Africa and folks in Galabeas and very different food stuff. And it just overwhelmed the senses. And I think Kazuya helped me put a construct around that and a reminder that, of who I really am and why I wanted to travel. And, I really went back and thought through in my journaling that night about, why I was there, etc. And it really helped me get back to laughter, get back to the smiles that are necessary for travel and building the relations with folks.
As you describe that, the word that comes to mind, and I don't know if it was the situation for you, but it sounds very similar to other conversations I've had and even maybe feelings I've felt. It almost sounds like homesick. Did you
Yeah, yeah, for
catch
sure.
it homesick?
I went through all the classic homesickness, that's why I would call home. And I can remember feeling lonely and sad, and especially when, at some points you don't meet people and you're sort of solo. And, um, I was living on about $10 a day, including lodging.
Mhm.
So, I'm having another banana and bread sandwich or whatever. And you miss mom's cooking. Yeah, all those things were going on for sure.
It's interesting because what I hear, it's like you at 18, 19 were having these thoughts, and here I am in my early 50s doing it because I didn't have the opportunity. I had some great opportunities, but I've kind of feel like the last 4.5 years have been me trying to catch up with because I didn't have the walkabout, right? But I still have the same emotions and those still, and honestly, sometimes even that financial thing, it's like, what am I doing, man? I'm really, um, and it's great because, a lot of great things to see, but also it's like every day there's decisions. Where am I going to get money out of the ATM? Where am I going to get my haircut? Where am I going to get my laundry done? So it's this constant decision thing that can be a little overwhelming, but some people maybe use it as distraction.
I actually over the holiday stretch here, I did a silent retreat in Mexico for a week, and one of the comments of the facilitator is that the meditation often reintroduces us to some of the people we forgot we used to be, and so there's and Kazuya helped me at that time remember who I was and who I wanted to be, and not that person that was all closed up.
Yeah. Do you think that the fact that he was a traveler as well, I guess where I'm going with this is sometimes people we meet when we're traveling are just different types of people, or they maybe provide a different purpose in our lives than the people that are more, I don't know if I want to say grounded, but maybe people back home that could just never imagine going on a trip like that. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this other than I'm curious about the people before you started traveling and then the people you met when you started traveling, and what do you have any big takeaways? Or because obviously you just kept going, you said you've been over 140 countries.
Yeah, I've been, of late, I've been able to justify it for work, but I still love meeting people when they're on a journey because they're different. The minds are more open. It's actually one of the things that I really think about in the context of our work. Some of the best opportunities for us is to work with multi-generational travel groups, families. And so, if you've got grandma and the parents and the kids, especially the kids, when you're traveling, the mind is open. You're outside of your box, your day to day existence. And philanthropy is a learned activity. And to the extent that we can introduce the opportunity to make a difference in lives to teenagers, it's going to stay with them for life. They walk into a school and they see 50 or 60 to 1 student teacher ratio and half the kids without shoes, and that triggers compassion. And the opportunity for us is to harness the compassion into, real action. But at the end of the day, when we can express our compassionate selves, it actually leads to joy. And so it's kind of funny. The folks that work for me, we joke that the real job description is they're ambassadors of joy. Um, they're managing impact. But it all sort of stems from that same basic travel experience early on in life for me, in that you learn about open horizons, who you are, how you close up, how you open up, meeting other travelers that are in the mix of that the moment of opening. I think that's why so many people meet when they're traveling and get married, because the relationship is made so fresh,
Yeah.
because they're not in their box, meeting in a box. They're actually meeting when they're open and willing to receive and maybe explore.
I love that. And I don't know
Boy,
if
that
you,
was a long-winded response, wasn't
no,
it?
no, no. Hey, that's what this is. We're just having coffee talk. Though what comes up for me too is I've got some people, I don't know if you have this, but I've got some people in my life that I'm close to that really just never had the travel bug, didn't have the opportunity, just it wasn't their thing. And then obviously I've got a lot of people in my life that I've met or just that even family members that do travel, that kind of get it. And it's amazing the difference I notice between the two groups when it comes to, I don't want to say compassion, but I'm going to say compassion, openness. I was thinking, well, who's going to be listening to this episode? I'm not going to mention any names, but I know people that spend an awful lot of time looking at social media, having conversations around politics, especially here in the US, and different ethnic groups, people that have come in from outside the country. And just their attitude towards some of these groups is so different than the people in my world that travel. So for example, if you've been or spent some time in Africa, maybe you look at some of the politics around Somalian stuff that may be going on in this country. You might look at it a little differently, or things that are happening in the Middle East. And it's just amazing the difference. I don't want to call it racism, but ethnocentrism for sure, that the people that don't travel just have a much harder time getting their head around that. And that sounds very judgmental, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? I'm going to stop before I say anything else.
Well, there's definitely been a long time perspective that if every member of Congress had actually had a passport, we might make different foreign policy decisions.
Isn't it crazy? Well, you probably noticed that travel? I don't know. You tell me. But you mentioned, okay, I was 18, 19-year-old young guy from the States, travel around exploring. I suspect that you probably didn't see a whole lot of other Americans. I'm sure you saw some, but just as far as the mix of, I guess what I'm saying is, even the term walkabout's kind of an Australian thing, right? I don't think, is that where that came
Yeah.
from? Aussie thing, right? Yeah. So you say that Aussies will go to walkabouts. That's like part of their thing. If you're Kiwi, or if you grew up in Denmark or something like that, you're just so much more likely to go take that gap here and go travel. Where Americans, I was careful with the word Americans because there's a lot of Americans that do not live in the US, right? It's a big continent, two big continents that are full of Americans. But those folks that live in the US tend to not do that gap here quite as often. And I think that probably tends to influence our politics and our attitudes.
For sure. The culture of taking a walkabout, I think fundamentally by the time they get off island, leaving Australia or New Zealand, they've invested so much that they often have to, they want to take a longer stretch in order to be able
That's
to do it
true.
right. And there's, I will say there of youth in the U.S. that are more comfortable traveling. I think that's reflective of the growth and sort of global activity. And certainly our industry has expanded, not just here, but in so many other countries. There is greater access to information about destinations, about how to do it. Practically speaking, the cost has come down for flights to get places, and the confidence to be able to book your place, and whether it's online or use a travel consultant. It's certainly it is becoming a larger percentage of our population that are having these types of experiences.
And I suspect part of that is, and I know that's the case for myself, is, because of COVID, a lot of people kind of opened up to the idea of working remotely. So this whole
Mm.
the digital nomad boom is because, oh wow, geez, I can work from anywhere. Now some people can work from anywhere and they choose to work from home in Des Moines, Iowa. That's fine. There's nothing, no issues there. But then there's an awful lot of people like myself that, oh, I can work remotely and there's no reason that I need to be in Arizona in July or whatever. And so a lot of the people that I'm seeing traveling now are able to because of, working remotely. So I suspect that's part of it.
What I'll share, Jason, is that post-COVID, the number of inquiries that we receive for travel groups, again, families that really want to incorporate into their itinerary some greater connectivity. They want to visit that school. They're asking about going to clinics. They want to build more time in their itineraries for these types of experiences. And I actually believe that, folks sat at home thinking about where they wanted to travel, but also how. Um, there's definitely been an explosive increase in the number of folks that are asking for us to build this into what they're looking for in their travel experience.
Why do you think that is?
I think we sat at home feeling isolated, for those years, and people were online, but maybe they were online realizing, hey, I want to fulfill a dream. I want to go for that bucket list in a moment, or I want my kids to get away from the darn screens. I want them to go see, the situation in other settings. So one of the funnest things that we do, I'm going to fill you in on one of the great moments that we were able to deliver. And I say
All
this
right.
quite seriously.
Please
We've
do.
got a
Yeah, please do.
relationship with a company called LifeStraw that do water filtration, and they take out 99.99% of bacteria, and the larger volume filters take out 99.99% of virus as well. And so we have been able to deliver these filters with training to every school that borders the Masai Mara, the Serengeti, and Ngorongoro Crater, Amboseli. We're doing Tarangire in Tanzania this year, the Bwindi, Queen Elizabeth. So approximately 140,000 children have access to clean water in the course of their school day. But the fun opportunity is for a family to be present during one of the trainings, because it's really energetic and you have, a couple hundred kids out front, and you talk about how the filter works. It's not a difficult process, but yeah, it takes some training. And we incorporate song and dance in Swahili, all about diarrhea and washing your hands. And there's a little dance routine that goes with it. In this process, a family can experience something as simple as clean water, but it's a real process of training and delivery of this technology that's a microfiber filtration system that's easily movable, but it sits like, very sacred in the schoolyard because everybody values it once it's implemented. So it's a real takeaway. And we give them, as part of their tour, the opportunity to fund a filter. So for approximately $600, they can leave one filter per 100 kids. They can leave a filter in place at a school for 100 kids. It would be good for about 5 years. Legacy of their experience in that location, in that country, in that park. And it's one of our really big success stories, because I think it's not only delivering impact, positive, clean water,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also giving a moment of being present in the training and understanding, okay, wow, this is a process. It's a dynamic one, but we're part of it. And so it's a really mutual bridge building moment.
It's an interesting conversation because there is a lot of talk about community-based tourism, conservation, sustainability, and sometimes some operators might, oh, we like to give back to the community, and then you go and you go to a facility where they're just selling hand goods. Yeah, I don't. I'm just gonna say it like I'm thinking that, right? On our tour, we went to the ladies' center where they're making beadwork and they're selling it, which is fine. But but I don't know where I'm going with this. You're the expert. I'm trying not to embarrass myself by the way I'm going to ask this question. But sometimes it doesn't feel very authentic. Sometimes, I've been on those tours and it's like, okay, this is great. It's great that they've got this building set up here and they're making some money selling stuff, but it just doesn't feel like I'm really connecting with the community,
Mm.
you know? And then there's other things that are where you're really, really involved. and you're actually, getting involved, watching them learn a new technology with the life straws and stuff like that, then maybe you feel a little bit more connected, or maybe you're having a meal with the family, that type of thing. I guess the question,
It's
yeah, go ahead.
I think you're asking a really good question in the context. It's not easy, and I'll say it seriously that tour operators, that even if they want to deliver this type of experience, you still have to organize for health and hygiene, safety and security, and it has to be in a setting with the right people. You don't want to bring your guests into a setting and they feel afraid, or they for whatever reason it's not a warm embrace. It's not easy for us. The commitment on the part of the company is that we have 20 full-time community development professionals in the field, and they're managing this relationship. So they're working finger on the pulse with the women's groups, finger on the pulse with doctors and nurses, the Ministry of Health, the principals and teachers, the Ministry of Education, and they're facilitating guest exposure. There are a lot of awesome volunteerism organizations out there. That's not us. We give guests an understanding of the challenges that these communities face, and we give them some opportunity to feel like they've gone deeper than a surface level in a luxury vehicle. Looking out the window, they'll spend a few hours, and often that's just rich enough. One of the funnest things that we can do. I'll give you another kind of crafted moment. Is I talked about the lunch program, getting families to serve lunch. And what it does, sometimes you can visit a school, and if you're looking around, if you're walking through campus and you're disturbing the classroom, you kind of feel like it's very objectifying. So what we consciously do is, especially in Africa after morning safari, drive up to the school and take them into the kitchen. And there's always wonderful women in the kitchen that are stirring the ugali, or mixing
Mhm.
the rice beans, and they're usually hilarious. They love to have volunteers, right? And there's nothing more fun than to watch, the ladies. They give an apron to dad, New York lawyer father, wearing an apron,
They
and
do
then the
valid.
kids line up, and he's spooning rice and beans, and the kids actually, they don't care if it's some Western person serving lunch. Well, what the heck? That's kind of funny. They just get their plate of food, and they care. Now they, but what you find is that the exchange is the smile across that counter as the beans are going on their plate. They look up and the father's doing this. And then we talk about the process of getting the beans there and the family contributing and the record bookkeeping and why this makes such a difference in the life of the school and the well-being of the kids. And often that's the favorite memory. They go to Kenya, East Africa, wherever, and they're thinking they're going to focus on wildlife. But the picture that ends up on the family fireplace mantle or on the fridge or wherever is dad in his apron serving the beans. And
You
so,
used, yeah, you used a really powerful word there. And I felt it when you said it, and it was the word smile.
mm,
That
mm,
is that smile is what creates those connections. And it could be just a smile from a child, a smile from a mother, just people, the women, the ladies working in the kitchen. I know I got that immediately because I've been in those situations, and
yeah.
I've worked with local staff in kitchens managing a small lodge, and the women are great. It's the ladies, you just go hang out with the ladies. They're just constantly joking and teasing and playing, and it was like, so I resonated. But it brought a smile to my face. And you mentioned the kids smiling at the father, the guy from New York, scooping beans and rice into their bowl, and it just reminds me of so many experiences that I've had that I remember because of a smile on a face, nothing else. It's the smile on the face that is what immediately comes to me. So, interesting. What I think the smiles are really actually, I spent in the last 6 months, I was in a place for a couple months where there weren't a lot of smiles. Honestly, it was a little bit
Mm,
hard for me to connect just culturally. It just wasn't a place where they smile very much. And I
mm.
realized I was having a hard time with it. And I picked up and I bought a ticket to Bangkok, Thailand because it's the land of smiles. I needed a smile so bad. that I went to Bangkok and spent a month or so in Thailand just because I needed the smiles. So that's pretty cool. There's so many things we can discuss, but I want to make sure we cover the things that are most important to you. I think we've touched on quite a few of those, but I'm curious, what have we not touched on that you want to make sure that we touch on before we wrap up? Either about you, I mean, we didn't even scratch the surface. I know that, Keith, you know that, but what do we want to do with the next 5 minutes or so of this conversation?
I love the people you've interviewed, and I've certainly heard, so many of your interviews. It's just such a great collection. There's opportunity, I think, for the travel and tourism industry. I guess I'll give it an industry perspective for a close. We've always been very good at figuring out how to sell, how to market the world's natural and cultural heritage. So many destinations around the world. We have not, as an industry, always been so good at sustaining these destinations. And I feel very privileged in my role that we are lending support to the ancestral stewards of these landscapes, the communities that have been in residence. And it's relatively new for so many parts of the world to have the volume of visitors that are showing up. Sometimes it's because they have a relationship with gorilla, or they've got a relationship with wildlife, or their ancestors constructed Machu Picchu or Angkor Wat, uh, and to make sure that in the context of what we're doing and selling, it's not all about the economics, a lot of which accrues to the company that's doing the selling and the organizing, but making sure that the community, the larger landscape level residents, are also benefiting directly, tangibly from our industry, and leaving behind things like a school, a built school environment, or a school lunch, or access to healthcare, a medical clinic. Um, you know, these are the types of investments that I think our industry is rising up to, and there is a growing percentage of companies that are offering this, and they're building it into their corporate structures. There's from the consumer side. And so I think one of the things I'm really optimistic about is that it's become more accepted as a standard of operation for this to be the case. We can always do a better job of sort of drilling down to make sure, as you referenced early on, about the greenwashing and these things. But to make a really structural difference with equity is important. And I think the industry is recognizing the importance.
How important do you think it is for the companies within the industry, the players, to play with each other, to participate and collaborate on these projects? Because I can sit here and listen to you saying, okay, well, this is what Abercrombie and Kent does. And Intrepid's going to say, this is what we do. And you've got all these operators. It sounds to me, as someone a little bit on the outside, in a sense, it sounds like a lot of silos, right? We're doing this, we're doing that. What are you going to do? And how do, like, if we have a lot of tour operators that listen to the show, if a tour operator listens to the show and really wants to get more involved in this stuff, but doesn't have the resources that Abercrombie and Kent has, but maybe has something else they can, like, can they reach out to you? Is there room for collaboration?
Absolutely. And there's a great need for it. Believe me, I am so vested in the idea of collaboration to make sure that we're achieving greater efficiencies when we collaborate. We stop some of the opportunity that communities take to sort of play one operator up against another, but we can do things at greater scale. I'm going to give you one example, and I'm talking out of turn because it's only in development stage, but we've got early buy-in. We have a lodge as our company, and in the Mara, and very close to us are several other companies. And I'm going to go ahead and name them because we're all talking. So Ambien, Wilderness Safaris, and Gamamara, we're all in the same neighborhood. The nearest high school is 35 kilometers away. Most of the kids are going to go 80 kilometers or to Nairobi. Look, as soon as you start to send kids that far, it means that they have to overnight. They're going to board. And that increases the cost. And so in many settings, they're only comfortable sending sending the boys.
Yep.
So we are now in the middle of the process of identifying land and working with the Ministry of Education to build a high school. And we're going to do it together. We're going to do it collaboratively. None of us have the resource to build a high school independently, probably. But when we think about working together, we can achieve things at scale like that. And there are so many instances where there's opportunity for us to deliver positive impact and uplift the broader community. We're never going to have enough jobs at a lodge for everyone who might live nearby. But I'll tell you what, we can build a school that's going to serve hundreds of kids and hopefully make it accessible, more accessible to both boys and girls so they don't have to travel as far.
That's very cool. Is there a parting? Let's inspire somebody. I think you're already inspiring some people. I don't want to put you on the spot, but yeah, I said let's inspire somebody. Like that's not putting you on the spot at all. But yeah, somebody that's listening to this that likes to travel. I don't know. Is there any just like a seed you want to plant in somebody's head right now about either
No,
philanthropy? I think you've already done
there's,
it.
there's, no, there's an old expression. The Ecotourism Society was promoting it at one point that your travel choice makes a difference. And if you're a traveler, asking the questions, well, what does your company do to give back to ensure equity in the industry? And if you're an operator, what exactly are you doing to make a difference? And is it a one-off? There's a distinction between a project, which is, tend to be one-off, and those are important, but programmatic support so that the community and your partners can rely on you year over year. Are you making project or programmatic commitments? There's nothing worse in our industry than airdropping a bunch of. I've never been a fan of sort of encouraging people to pack with a purpose and carry a whole bunch of plastic shoes and whatever, and then it gets distributed in some manner somewhere. But to actually invest the time and the effort necessary to figure out how do we uplift education or healthcare or jobs in a meaningful way, not always, with a timeline of, hey, I got to get this delivered in the next 2 months while I'm here because it's the season. Well, there's life after the season.
Yeah, it's
So I
such a
would say, I don't know if it's inspirational or not, but your travel choice does make a difference. And to ask those questions, and if you're on the service delivery side, what are we doing exactly to make it?
going to have a link. I guess the link is going to be right to the philanthropy thing of Abercrombie and Kent. I can't remember which link you gave me, but they'll be able to go
That'd be
on
great.
and learn more about kind of what you guys are doing. And because again, I said we've got a lot of tour operators that listen to this. I think if we can collaborate on projects, that'd be great. So I'm encouraging any tour operators listening to this, go take a look at what they're doing and figure out, what you can do together.
Open door, wide open. Go visit. And if you want to bring your guests, we'll brand it as your company. I don't care. It's all about the impact.
Yep. All right. I love it. Keith, thank you so much. I know you've got a busy schedule, and for you to cut out some time to share with us is really, really important. And thank you so much. I appreciate you doing that. I look forward to chatting with you again soon. We've got a lot more to discuss in another conversation. Thanks, Keith.
I look forward, Jason. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.